Mariners 4, Athletics 6. The Mariners left the door open, and the A's came right back through it. They just didn't quite finish through the line. Although they did put up a good effort at the end, they just didn't finish through the line. Welcome to the Dom Skiing Channel, your one-stop shop for the Mariners storylines on Seattle's minds. And you got to remember that even if you're doing well, even if you do a lot of things right that day, there's another team on the other side who wants to win just as bad as you do. It's not always going to be about who wants it more, or it's sometimes a couple batted balls go the other way, and they go back to back, and with the top two hitters in their lineup, that's the difference in the game. But there's a whole lot to talk about. So obviously 6-4 on runs, 13-10 on hits, 322 to 247 on expected batting average. You guys might be like, oh, expected stats, but if you're a Mariners fan, if you are here for the StatCast content, welcome. This is the right spot for you, right? This is the number one, your one-stop shop for the StatCast storylines on, Mariners fans' minds, on Seattle's minds, like the StatCast Mariners storylines. And the Mariners, when they win on expected batting average this year, they've got a pretty good chance of winning. When they don't win that battle, and they lost it by a fair 70 points, 70, 80 points tonight. They have a pretty, low chance of winning. Although almost got to Joel Kuhnel in the ninth inning, who can't keep getting away with this, as the Breaking Bad meme goes. You let the door open. You score the 2 runs in the first inning. Cal Raleigh solo shot. Then you get Josh Naylor driving Julio home. And then you add on another Canzone homer in the second inning and another solo shot. Then you're up 3-0. You think that, okay, we're in the driver's seat this game, but the A's come back with 3 solo homers of their own. It's 3-3. Then in the 8th inning, score 3 runs, and that's the difference in the ball game. 9th inning, Mariners get 1 back. There's some good signs up and down the lineup that we're going to talk about a little bit more as well. The main thing, and I have to say, Hogan Harris, I hate giving my hats off to somebody who shuts down the Mariners offense just as much as the next Mariners fan, but this guy absolutely shut down the Mariners offense tonight. 1 hard hit on 25 pitches, 2 swinging strikes in 1 2/3 innings. He mowed down the Mariners hitters. No hits, no walks. It just didn't give him an inch when he had to be great. He was. Pitches for each team right around the 150 mark. Weren't separated on stuff like that. Mariners actually had way more hard hits in this game. The Mariners had way less. The Mariners allowed way more hard hits in this game. 18 hard hits allowed. That's not going to get it done. You're going to give up a few homers if you do that, most likely, and quite a few hits. Then they only have 10 hard hits themselves. But Emerson Hancock, really want to talk about him tonight because he lived in the zone. At least that's what the overall zone percentage is going to tell you. But you see, there's so much fastballs in the zone. He's just throwing fastballs in the zone. The changeup and the sweeper, he didn't throw that much overall, and he barely ever threw them in the zone. So he got deep into these counts, a whole lot of balls. 85 pitches. He was doing well on his pitch count. He actually got a couple strikeouts early, a whole lot of ground balls too. And a whole lot of fly balls for that matter. But when it came to having a plan, effectively having your breaking balls play off your fastballs, I don't know if that was, I would not say that this was the start where that worked for Emerson Hancock, and there's quite a few reasons. Getting down to his line, right? 5 innings pitched, 7 hits, 3 runs, all earned. No walks, only 3 strikeouts though. 3 homers, 3 runs were on solo shots, and then 85 pitches, 9 hard hits, and 11 swinging strikes. Not enough sweepers, not enough, and not enough for strikes. When he doesn't have that sweeper this year, it sends him right back into fastball purgatory, where he's got this 4-seam and the sinker that are basically his only 2 weapons. They change up 7 times going to left-handers, and that's a good pitch. Last year has been massively effective, swing and miss wise. Running the 33% whiff rates on the sweeper and the changeup in this one, but just not throwing them that much. And there's a reason for that too. Fastball getting 7 whiffs, still getting a lot of whiffs on the fastball, but the -3 induced vertical break is a problem. We're going to talk about that. So, he's getting enough whiffs, and he's living in the zone like crazy with both fastballs. which is, that those things sound great, right? 74%, 68% zone percentage with his fastballs. But and this is the big thing. He does that. That's kind of what he did last year with the four seam and sinker. Bound to get hit hard, just like he did before this year. If that's what he's going to do, honestly, I'm not as interested. That's, Bryce Miller was in the dugout tonight. Saw him on the field pregame. He, like, if this is what Emerson Hancock is going to be, like, he is turning back into, I hate to say turning back into a pumpkin because I have so much faith. I think he's got so much talent, but tonight he didn't have it. And if this might be the floor for Emerson Hancock, through 5 starts, now maybe you can properly assess the floor for Hancock and say, okay, it's the floor is going back to what he did last year, and this was still one of the better starts. Like 3 earned runs, right? This isn't the Tigers' start last year where he has to get pulled in the first inning, his first start of the year last year. But 3 homers, right? Could have been a lot worse. He keeps the sweeper and changeup way out of the zone, so he's running these insane zone percentages of these zone rates of 74 and 68% on the fastballs, and then on the breaking balls, 19 and 14%. So you go back to this pitch map with that context, and it's like, okay, there's a whole lot of fastballs in the zone. There's not a lot of breaking balls in the zone. There's a whole lot of breaking balls out of the zone. There's not a lot of fastballs. He wasn't as deceptive as he wants to be, which he was in his first start. He really was. And one of the big things, it just makes his breaking balls easier to recognize. Basically, makes all the pitches easier to recognize when everything is completely, like one side or the other. It's binary. It's either way out of the zone breaking ball or it's an in the zone fastball. And only 10 inches of induced vertical break on the four seam tonight. I remember, this is off topic. I know I love to go on off topic tangents, but with Gavin Williams back when he was, like last year, he was a sleeper that I liked. And he had like 14 inches of induced vertical break early on instead of 16 on his fastball. And that was all the difference that it took for it to be not as effective of a pitch. Whereas 16, he was in inches of induced vertical break. Oh, this guy's, going to break out, like this interesting breakout pick. This pitch is awesome, can take this guy to new heights. And then at 14, oh, not interested. He was even, I think, at 13 at some points. Now, Hancock, just getting to 13 for Hancock is enough to be interesting because he has that 14 inches of induced horizontal break. And going back to the Guardian start where he no-hit them for 6 innings, that was the key. Was the horizontal break was awesome, but so was the vertical break. Those things were playing off each other. And that the 10 versus 13, it makes all the difference, from the 13 he's beginning on the year. -3 makes such a massive difference. Just to, like, that's that. I mean, to put it, bluntly, like, that's the difference between the pitch going, hitting the bat and then going, hitting the meat of the bat for a homer, for a hard hit, which he got hit hard tonight, versus going for a pop-up. I mean, it's the difference in, the bat, that's literally the baseball bat, that you're either missing or you're hitting the baseball bat. And you obviously don't want to put the pitch where the baseball bat's going to be. So 93 mile an hour average exit velocity might be the hardest this year that we've seen from him. I think it is. But, is his, what I'm like, either maybe this is just one start, right? Maybe this is just, one start where it's down to 13, or it's down from 13 to 10, but if that's where he's going to be, then that's going to be a problem. And, is it steadily going down? Because if it is steadily going down, then that would be a real cause for concern. If it's not, if he rebounds to 13 in his next start, if he can even come back at 14, he can, now can be, new heights again, breakout guy. 13, okay, he can be this steady back into the rotation arm and still make it interesting, go 6-man rotation, Bryce, force the issue with Bryce Miller. But if it's less than 13, 10 to 13, in that, like, 12, I don't, it's starting to get a little shaky, really back end of the rotation guy. 11, 10, if it's 10 or 11, right, he's probably going to have to go back to AAA Tacoma and be the depth starter once Bryce Miller comes back, or he's going to have to move to the bullpen. Something's going to have to change. And I mean, you need to get him back to that insane rise. And I want to point out something that Eno Sarris actually said before this game or during this game, I think it was. He said, he was looking at the Baseball Savant, Eno Sarris from The Athletic, runs the Rates and Barrows podcast. Emerson Hancock lowered his arm angle and increased the ride on his four seam to where it's only an inch below average, despite having the lowest arm angle among right-handed starting pitchers in the majors. Gotta click that arm angle thing on Savant to see blah blah blah. But really, everything's sideways except the four seamers because he was getting that vertical lift just to only an inch below average, right? Because he was getting it to 13, that was all the difference, right? Now that it's at 10, it changes completely everything. So everything Eno said here, is true. It's that, you lower the arm angle, you have the lowest arm angle, and you have the, even an average rising effect. It's going to be extremely effective. We even talked about this with Brian Wu. He's got a super low arm angle, and he's got, great rise. He doesn't have this problem because he's got more rise than Hancock. But Hancock is struggling to have enough rise from the low arm angle, possibly in this start. I'm sure that the Mariners are going to work on this and figure, all this stuff out. I'm interested to see what he comes back with next time. And again, the results tonight weren't nearly as bad as they could have been. It was 3 solo shots, and you were tied. Changeup can be a total weapon and keep sweeper working well, but the Mariners, Cal, who's calling the pitches behind the plate to Emerson, and or Hancock, clearly doesn't want him throwing it much right now. He might not be comfortable with it, but some part of the people who have a say in what pitches he throws, whether that be the Mariners, Pete Woodworth, the pitching coach, Cal Raleigh, who's calling the pitches behind the plate, Emerson Hancock, there's a reason why he's not throwing the changeup very much. They've been throwing it 4% on the year, but that would kind of add something else in. He also completely ditched the cutter, which I didn't even write any notes for in this one, but he completely ditches the cutter, and I don't think that was a good thing. I think you need some more weapons. Because when you're four-seam sinker, then you're back to who you were last year with a little bit more velocity and a little bit lower of an arm angle. But then you're still struggling with when you're struggling with this vertical break, if it's happened now, it's probably going to happen again, unless there's something really like a fix that you really can find, quickly, for the next start, where you can diagnose exactly what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again. If that's not the case, I'd love for you to have a cutter where you can go to that when then the four seam isn't rising as much as you need it to. And when you get behind in basically what happened tonight, he got behind in counts, even he has to hit the zone, and then he only wants to throw fastballs in the zone, as evidenced by these insane dichotomy of zone rates, with 74 and 68% on the four seam and the sinker. Then the sweeper and changeup at 19 and 14%. Which for a total of 56%, but it doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. So then you go, okay, so Fangraphs. I want to start looking at these Fangraphs live stats, because they have them up for us. This is some really, cutting edge stuff to have the day of the game. So we look at Fangraphs, right? 20 batters faced, obviously over 5 innings pitched. Not too many strikeouts, but no walks is good. 286 BABIP, you could say, is that unlucky? Maybe, but you get hit super hard. You can't be too mad at it. Left a whole bunch of guys on base. Everybody who got a hit, who didn't homer. Then 47.1% ground ball rate. Hey, that's great. You'll take that any day of the week. But then he's got, right, you look at the ERA for the start, 5.4. Factoring into, now he's got a 2.83 on the year for 2026. The FIP, the fielding independent pitching, which looks at, okay, how did you pitch, not including the fielding, not, including errors or any sort of fielding. 973 FIP. For the year, he's got a 397 now, but he had a 973 FIP in the start. His XFIP, his expected fielding independent pitching, which basically calculates with home runs as just a certain, percentage, as 10.5% of fly balls, because that's the league average. A 330 xFIP to a 973 FIP. And what's the reason for that? It's the home run to fly ball rate that you look at. And instead of, 10.5% is the league average home run to fly ball rate. He had a 60% home run to fly ball rate. those fly balls that were, in that sixth inning just start going. And, when Dan pulls them right there, it's because, man, like he is getting squared up. And that's just the truth of it. He's getting totally getting the home run to fly ball rate. Didn't get BABIP'd, but he got an insane home run to fly ball rate. And basically, the top hitters in the lineup, you have to throw them fastballs. You have to land something in the zone. You only want to throw your fastballs in the zone, so you throw them a fastball in the zone so they hit it out of the park. And both of them hit it to straightaway center, by the way. Kurtz was 417 into the J-Rod squad, into center field, straightaway center field. Then Langolier is just a little bit to the left of it, 432 feet. So absolute moonshots, and both of them were homers in Kurtz at 26 out of 30 parks, Langolier's 30 out of 30 ballparks. So there is no luck involved there. Those were just absolutely crushed. Since they're to center field, it's like, oh, maybe they could. You might think they could have stayed in the park. No, those were homers. No matter where you're at, no matter what, those were going to be homers. You can't even say you got BABIP'd. So basically that's what happened, right? So that's the story with Hancock. Let me know in the comments below, what did you see with Hancock tonight? What do you think of all of this stuff with this fastball not rising as much? Just any comments you have on Hancock, I'd love to hear them. If any questions you have for me that I can respond to, would love to have the discussion about Emerson Hancock, where he's at, what we can notice as the public. Then JT Ginn, he has a completely different pitch plot. He doesn't even go in the zone that much. He's throwing pitches way out of the zone when he feels like it, because he's not going to give up all this damage. And once he gives up some damage in the first inning, it's like, well, now the pressure's off. Let me try to get you guys to chase. Let me go for the strikeouts, and the pressure's off anyway. So let me try some stuff out. He's got 6 different offerings that he throws. Basically like mixes it up totally, right? You see the percentages: 27% four seam, 23% sinker, 18% changeup, 17% cutter, 14% slider. So every pitch was, so 5 different offerings. Did I say 6? But 5 different offerings, and they're all insanely different on the movement, and so you see this super diverse pitch chart. And that, you see the 46% zone rate, but it doesn't matter because everything is in that same range, right? He keeps you totally guessing on what he's actually throwing. It doesn't have to vary stuff through the order too much, but he can tweak it things a little bit. It kind of just ends up as it is. The chase rate at 26%, pretty good, right? But he gets a decent amount of swinging strikes. Okay. Oh, here it is. So, 5 1/3 inning. JT Ginn. If you were to watch this game, I was at this game. If you were to be at this game, you would, for most of it, when the starters were in, you would have not said JT Ginn is pitching better than Emerson Hancock, based on the score, based on everything, the feel on the mound and everything. But JT Ginn ends up 5 1/3 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, all earned, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, 2 homers, 92 pitches, 6 hard hits, and 12 swinging strikes. He beats Hancock, more swinging strikes, more, goes further into the game with 5 1/3 innings pitched, more strikeouts, double actually, same amount of runs given up, a much lower average exit velocity, and based on the underlying metrics, it looks like JT Ginn actually had the better start at the end of the day. That's baseball. When you give up these bombs to Kurtz and to Langoliers, it's that kind of skews things. And I mean, it shows a 3-run lead is really not that much in today's game where the long ball is so prevalent. A 3-run lead, that's within save territory, because 3-run leads are not. I mean, the Mariners almost took that 3-run lead back, in the 9th inning, which we're going to get to. Part of the reason that he had better underlying metrics, I think, was just the fact that he had more different weapons to get outs with. He kept the hitters more on their toes, and although the Mariners had this lead, so it didn't feel like, oh well, maybe they don't need to tack on as much. They did end up needing to tack on more, and didn't get that. And he was allowed to pitch out of the zone a lot more, and because the pressure was off after he gave up runs, so he racked up strikeouts. And then you go and look at his ERA, a little lower for the start, because he gets another out. more than Hancock, and then a 6.32 FIP and a 2.47 xFIP. So same thing as Hancock with a high FIP and a low xFIP, because he runs a 50% home run to fly ball rate. So, giving up those 2 homers to Cal and Canzone, both solo shots as well. Um, just not, high FIP, low xFIP, just not quite as bad as Hancock. Because he didn't give up quite as many hard hits, which I would say is because he had just I'd say he had a substantial amount more deception, partly because he had 3 different fastballs he was confident in, but his 2 inches more induced vertical break. His vertical break was down 1 inch from 13 to 12, where he has 13 as his year average to date so far too. Now he only has 4 inches of induced horizontal break. Hancock, right, 14 inches of induced horizontal break. When you got 13 and 14, that's better than 13 and 4. But when 12 and 4 is better than 10 and 14. So this is very abstract, but you gotta think that way. When you're talking about pitching, there's a level of artistry to it. And then also kind of weird and kind of funny, right? Same BABIP as Hancock at 286 batting average on balls in play. His ground ball rate actually much even better than Hancock, 62.5%. So, wow. So that's really the pitching matchup, starting pitching matchup, which is the main thing, wanted to talk about today. That ended up playing a role, but and the offense was kind of on the side of that, doing their thing as they do every day. But the starting pitching is the stuff that I want to cover on the daily and go deep into. I think that tells the story, and off of that, where the starting pitchers end up, you can see how the offense played their roles. In the Mariners, other storylines for the Mariners, the big 3 of Cal, Julio, and Josh Naylor. I said this is the week that they're going to normalize their stats. They're going up against probably the easiest pitching slate that they've had of the season. Much easier than last week, and for that matter, the week before. I think those were some much harder pitching matchups. With seeing the Rangers twice and everything, and seeing the Padres, and so Cal, Julio, and Josh each had 2 hard hits on the day, and each of them had I would say a very good, if not great, game offensively. Cal had the first inning homer, Julio 2 for 4 with a run scored, and Josh Naylor 3 for 4, 2 doubles and a ribby. You got to be optimistic about where these big 3 are at, because they are going to be able to, carry this lineup and carry this team to, and they can carry this team to the playoffs. Those 3, plus obviously the starting pitching, but offensively, those 3 are going to carry this team for weeks on end this season. So the fact that they're running in form is awesome. But also, Dom Canzone, 2 for 4 in his first 2 at bats of the night. Home run and a double. Obviously a run in RBIs with that. And then the 9th inning, really, Hogan Harris, right, came in and just obliterated the Mariners in the 7th and 8th inning after Mark Leiter Jr. came in after Hogan Harris. So it was like the 6th and the 7th inning that Harris was in. Where they took out JT in the 6th. Harris comes in. Hogan Harris, 3 swinging strikes on 25 pitches, 85.6 mile an hour average exit velocity. He was doing some interesting things, though. You can't get too much out of a 25 pitch outing in terms of swinging strikes and quality of contact. But you look at this 4-seam basketball, 95 with 18 inches of induced vertical break, then 8 inches of horizontal break. That's nasty, and definitely had the Mariners in a blender, throwing that 56% of the time. Barely any batted ball events, 1 hard hit, low average EVs. But again, quality of contact takes a long time to normalize. But if you were there at the game, you see this guy come in and basically just obliterate the Mariners, and that's just the truth of it. Hats off to him. Not that the Mariners were overmatched or anything. He just did his job really well in the night. Mark Leiter Jr. a little bit gave up 2 hits, a little bit less stout than Hogan Harris. He honestly, that was probably the best. That was the best reliever for the A's that I saw tonight. And then Joel Kuhnel This guy comes in the ninth inning. I know he's the A's closer. He's one of the only closers in baseball that hasn't blown a save yet. He has never been good in his career before this, really, and he doesn't have anything too interesting in his profile. He came into tonight, not allowed to run. Well, at least the Mariners corrected that and put the first run on his stat line of the year. However, this dude came into tonight with a 0 ERA, 3.95 expected ERA. His batting average against was 105, and then his expected batting average against 328. So I'm seeing this. I'm like, the Mariners got to destroy this guy in the ninth inning. I mean, everything for him is terrible in quality. Like average exit velocity, his fastball velocity is low. He's like a sinker cutter and a tiny bit of changeup and tiny bit of two seamer. But it's like he throws the sinker and the cutter to the Mariners hitters, and they're 8 and 9 hitters. The Mariners 8 and 9 hitters, Cole Young, Leo Rivas ripped this guy for a couple hard hits. I guess 2 hits, 1 hard hit. But it's like the feeling that something's going is there. And then J.P. Crawford, I think grounds out or pops out. I think pops out into foul territory. But Cal Raleigh has this shot to tie the game with one swing of the bat. He's the tying run at the plate. He gets under it just a little too much, and Lawrence Butler catches it in right field. Who, by the way, Lawrence Butler had a great game today. He had an 11 pitch at bat that he singled off of. Great game at the plate for him, at least I'll say, because 11 pitch at bat that he singled off of, and he had another. I think he might have even driven in the runs for the Athletics, the winning run. Let's see. No, he didn't. Yeah, he did. He drove in 2 runs with a hit in the 8th inning, and those ended up being the winning runs, the 5th and 6th runs that the Athletics scored, which made it such a deficit the Mariners would have to overcome. But however, he did have 2 base running errors. Once where he gets picked off at second base, and another time where I can't even remember what the other one was, but 2 base running errors. Or maybe got caught stealing. That part is escaping me right a second. He did have 4 hard hits, so all 4 of his at bats a hard hit though. And man, the A's lineup tons of hard hits. Kurtz and Langeliers 2 each. Cortez and Soderstrom 3 each. Carlos Cortez, by the way, wasn't familiar with his game until today. Like barely knew who he was, just a little bit. But now I see why he's batting 3rd in their lineup. 4 for 5, a homer. And yeah, he's batting 333, 965 OPS. Like he's a little guy. He's like 5'7", but he is clearly just. I mean, he's seeing the ball well and hitting the ball well, and he's a lefty. So I mean, yeah, he's good. He's really good. So I mean, this A's lineup is going to be dangerous. It's going to cause problems. 13 hits tonight, and 6 runs in the Mariners. Then, yeah, but Joel Kuhnel, back to Joel Kuhnel, is like in that 9th inning, right? Mariners 8 and 9 hitters, Cole Young and Leo Rivas rip him for 2 hits. This guy is not going to be the closer the whole year by my estimation. I'd put more money on it being Hogan Harris than him. I'd rather put my money on it being anybody, because I don't understand how. I think this guy's just getting lucky so far. Now, I do think the A's know something that I don't. Maybe his sinker cutter combo is just that good, and he has these terrible expected stats, but those haven't normalized yet. And they'll normalize down, and maybe Joel Kuhnel will be an all-star. And if that happens, I will not eat my hat, but metaphorically, I won't, I'll eat my hat in that case. But he can't keep getting away with this, the Jesse Pinkman Breaking Bad meme, and I will. I think if the Mariners were to face him this series, in either of the last 2 games, I am licking my chops, ready for what's going to happen. Yeah, Mariners, good opportunity today. Some good signs, some bad signs, a whole lot that's I think we can understand though, and that I think the main thing to remember, as it's almost midnight, approaching midnight, is As long as you go 1-0 every pitch, stay stoic, and give all glory to God, you can't lose. I will see you guys tomorrow for the pregame. Go M's.